Hey guys, welcome back. This week I thought it'd be good to answer a question that a lot of people have sent in to my Instagram and on YouTube, which is basically going over my gear. Now, next week we'll go back to business as usual. We'll do a #1 that's in the UK charts that week, and we'll take the guitar parts and go over it. But I've been meaning to do this video for a while, and I think the reason why I've decided to do it this week is because I finally got my amp back from Anderton's. So because of the whole COVID situation, it's been in repair for basically the whole of lockdown. So all of the Top of the Chops videos that you've seen in that time have been plugins. So I was using the Waves PRS bundles and just plugging straight into my Focusrite interface. So I'm going to go over all of my studio gear today, just kind of like a brief overview of it. I'm going to show you the amp and show you the settings that I use for the amp. Don't think of this as like a full demo review video because there's so much out there already. It's more to show you kind of how I get the sound that I do for the Top of the Chops videos. So at the moment I'm in a conservatory, so it's not the best for sound. I usually rent a studio in London, but now I've basically teamed up with my management and just use the studio there when I need to, and then just kind of set up my own home studio. But I will be moving shortly and I'm going to properly do a full studio conversion, so hopefully the videos are going to look much better in there and they're going to sound a lot better as well, and I'm actually going to be able to mix my music because Windows, I'm not very good for sound. So I'm going to show you my speakers that I use, I'm going to show you my guitar amp, the microphone that I use, my preamps, my interfaces, and my pedal board as well. I don't think there's anything else, but we'll just kind of go over those in detail and I can show you what I use for production and what I use for these videos. So before we get into it, please make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I should probably mention is where all this audio is going, and it's going into my MacBook Pro here, which is pretty ancient. It's 2012, I think, but it's got an SSD drive in it. I took the disk drive out, the CD drive, and put a SSD terabyte in there, or 500 gig, I think. So yeah, everything goes into there. I'm recording through Logic and the interface. So I've got this rig here, which is basically my RME interface and my Avalon 737 SP, which is amazing. It's my favorite bit of studio gear, basically. I run vocals through it, acoustic guitars. It's basically my bass amp as well. But yeah, just anything mic'd up. So it's a compressor, an EQ, and a valve preamp in there all at once. And yeah, I use the whole thing. So that's basically rigged up to the RME. I do have this Focusrite here, which when I was doing the Top of the Chops videos before, I was using that. And to be honest, it's cool. It does its job. It's really portable. But when I got the Avalon, I wanted something with better converters in, and when you even DI a guitar straight into the Focusrite or the RME, you really can tell the difference. And I think it's just kind of, these were around in the same sort of generation, so they pair up really nicely. So I did have it in a desk in my studio when I rented one in London, but now I've just got it in this portable rig, and a lot of vocalists that I work with really like the vocal sound that I get when I'm vocal producing, and it's all down to that basically. I compress the vocals on there. When I'm doing vocals, I don't actually use the EQ much, and I'm using Antara's Auto-Tune, CLA vocals, so I put that on all of my vocals basically, which I'm just kind of boosting the high end and compressing again. I use RVox as well, so a lot of Waves plugins. Okay, and a de-esser sometimes if it needs it, delay and reverb basically. The reverbs I use quite a lot, so what you heard on the last Top of the Chops was I was sending the guitars to a bus, and on the bus was Sound Toys, what's it called? Little plate. So there's that, and then there's Valhalla as well if I want to have a bit more kind of epic reverb on there. So yeah, that's kind of my computer setup, and that's kind of how it is in the studio as well. So I use the Adam A7X monitors here, and they're amazing just for kind of like your everyday studio monitors. I used to use Rockets, KRKs, and these were just a massive upgrade to those. And in the studio it was a lot bigger than this room, and I used to I still do crank my music way too loud. But I got a sub, and it was the sub 12, so the Adam sub 12 to go with this, which was a bit crazy, but it was very, very fun to produce with, especially kind of your hip hop tracks and the pop stuff, with lots of low end. But yeah, I don't need that in here anymore, so I left it with my good friend Alan Sampson. I say I left it, he bought it off me. I think he sold it now. He's the king of buying and selling stuff. So yeah, that's basically my speaker and my interface and my computer setup. And then microphone, I haven't got it in this room at the moment. I don't know where it is, hopefully it's somewhere, but I've got a Neumann Tlm 103. So yeah, that's a great kind of all-round vocal mic. I use it on acoustic guitars as well, and that going through the Avalon just sounds awesome. At the time I was kind of moving to this studio, paying London prices, and couldn't quite stretch out to the U87. So the TLM was just kind of what I landed on, and it's awesome. Most of the studios I work in as well now do use a TLM as well. So yeah, really good. So I'm going to show some stills as well of all the gear, because it's probably got me in focus rather than all of the gear. But as well with the guitar amp, I'm using SM57 just straight in front of the cone, off axis. And yeah, the setup of the amp, it's a Fender bass breaker. So I really, really like the amp. I went to Anderton's and tried out 3 different guitar amps. I think it was this, the Princeton, and Hot Rod Deluxe. Can't speak today. And just because I needed something in this room, I didn't need it to be mega loud, I didn't want it to be mega heavy. I'm going to teach with it, and yeah, I just wanted something kind of small and something that does everything I need it to. And at the time I didn't realise that I was going to get into kind of pedals and build a pedal board, so I thought, right, I want something that's got a gain channel on it, and this actually has 2 gain channels. So you've got overdrive, and then you've got like a high gain. What do they call it? Yeah, they do call it gain and high gain. And the gain sounded great. I compared it to a pedal there. I can't remember what pedal it was, and I just thought I might just buy this, and then I don't have to buy a bunch of pedals. As you do, ended up buying loads and loads of pedals. Yeah, I very rarely use that gain channel now, but when I show you the amp, I'll turn it on in a minute and show you the different channels as well, just so you can hear. But the high gain's pretty mad for a Fender. You know, I don't think I've ever heard a Fender go to that sort of gain level, but it's great. It's got a reverb on there as well. I think it's a digital reverb, which sounds really, really good. Usually the Fenders, you'll hear like a spring reverb on there. But yeah, I think one day, I mean, I love the twin reverb, and I probably will get one day if I can build this studio, and it's kind of soundproofed enough, because they are loud. I would love to have one, but yeah, in terms of kind of the sound that you'll hear from this, I'm really impressed, and a lot of it's from my guitar as well, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But yeah, in terms of the settings on this, you've literally got a volume. So this is the clean channel, a volume, bass, treble, and mids, and then a bright switch, which I don't really turn on much. To be honest, the EQ I set kind of flat. Most of it's at 12 o'clock or just over. A bit more bass and treble. And yeah, it's very, very subtle. When you change the EQ on this, yeah, it's subtle. So it's not doing kind of mega stuff. Sometimes, you might turn it a bit and not even notice much, but it's when you really kind of sit into a melody or start playing a lead, and those settings that you've changed were really subtle, but they've made such a difference. And and really kind of translate into guitar language. So then you've got channel 2, you've got a separate gain then, and you've got again bass, middle, treble, and then your reverb at the end, and then a high gain switch. So there's a switch for channel 2 and then a switch for high gain, but you can obviously only use high gain if you're on channel 2. There's also an emulated line out, which is the best emulated line out I've ever heard from an amplifier. I haven't heard much. The last time I've got a TSL 100 Marshall stack as well, and that's got one on there, and it's just fizzy and awful. But the great thing about this is you plug an XLR into the back, and there's a switch to basically have a cab emulator on it. So you've got basically an output from the preamp, and then you can emulate a cab with the button and just get that kind of body and roominess, and it sounds great. I probably wouldn't use it much. I'd probably just use the plugins I've got if I wanted to do some kind of headphone recording or low volume recording. But I mean, this amp, I have literally, so the recordings you're going to hear today, it is literally like one notch up from zero. I've got it really quiet. Granted, I've got the input boosted quite a bit on the RME, but it sounds really clean, and you'll hear that. Obviously it's going to sound better the more you crank it, but you still get a great sound. That's why it's good that it's small and compact. You don't have to have it blasting the windows down. But I'm not actually using the Avalon, so that's another thing to note. The microphone SM57 is going straight into the RME, and the reason I do that is because I just want to keep the source nice and simple. So obviously it's a valve amp. The Avalon is a valve preamp. It's got an EQ, a compressor and everything on it. Really, I've got all that stuff in the amp, and on my pedals I've got a compressor pedal, so I'll get the sound how I want it at source, and then I just want the mic to pick it up and send it straight to the computer. Some people might think, oh, you've got that Avalon, you're wasting it, why don't you use it and combine it? But I just like it nice and simple, and it just sounds really clean, just going straight in. And then a lot of the time I will record it completely dry, so none of the reverb on it, because then I'll put that on at the end. And even my delay pedal, sometimes I won't even use that. I would put my delay on at the end, because then it's going to sync in time with how I've recorded it to the click, and it's not going to be kind of this atmospheric. Basically, when you're using these ambient effects, so reverb and delay, it's more kind of in the room, I find. If I record that, a lot of that kind of ambience is going to get lost, whereas if I put it on a bus on the recorded channel, I've got a lot more control, and I can make it as kind of wet or as dry as I like. Yeah, just a lot more control. So that stuff is mainly for when I'm just jamming and I want the feeling in the room, or if I'm playing live, which I haven't done much recently, as no one has. But yeah, for the sake of today, just so you can hear the pedals and what they do, I'll leave the reverb on the amp, and I will use my delay on here as well. Okay, cool. So before we get to the guitar, the pedal board. So I'll get a picture of the pedal board down here so that you can see it. So from left to right, so I've got a Xvive power supply. It's just isolated power, basically 9 volts. The pedal is it's a pedal train Metro 16, just something I ordered off Amazon. You basically put the tape on yourself and build it yourself. Essentially, you just get given the materials and the board. So I've got the Ditto Leaper. So I have this basically at the end of the chain, so it picks up all of my pedals before it, because I don't want any of those pedals to affect the signal of what I'm recording into the Ditto. I know they've got a new Ditto Leaper out at the moment, but there's a little problem with it. I'm hoping they fix that, because I would get that straight away. You can record like multiple versions of it. But yeah, this one you can only do like one set, so you do like 8 bars, everything else has to record at 8 bars, whereas the other one you can do a different number, but there's a bit of a lag, I think, when it comes back round to the 1. So I've seen that on a few reviews of it, so hopefully they fix that, because I would buy that straight away. So from where my guitar goes in, obviously we've got my tuner. I've only got the TU2 at the moment, as a TU3 out, I think. Then I go, do I go into the, where do I go next? I go into the compressor next. So I compress the guitar signal before I go into my overdrive, I think. Yeah, cool. And this compressor is an interesting one. It's the Luminal hybrid compressor. Yeah, hybrid compressor. And there are so many settings on it. Now, when I bought it, I got it home. It was quite expensive. It was like the only one other than the Boss compressor that they had in the shop, and I really wanted like a kind of high-end one. And I got back and I Googled it when I was setting it up, and apparently it was a bass one. So Luminal do a lot of, I think they build bass guitars and bass effects, and I think they have something to do with the company that do that plugin, the Nameless, the Fortin Nameless. So yeah, they're quite well respected in like the metal industry. But I watched a video where Reverb was demoing it, and he basically said you can plug it into your computer, go into the settings and turn it to guitar mode. Which I was really pleased about, because when I bought it I was playing along and it just sounded great, and just my OCD was saying, but it's a bass, should I get a guitar specific one? I think it was the Cali, is it the 76 that I was looking at, and I thought maybe I'll take this back and then get that, but I just kind of fell in love with it and started using it a lot more. And the settings on it, there's just so much control. So you can change your ratio. There's different modes that are based on 3 different actual studio compressors. I can't remember what they are, but what it is on here, you've got the bus, sim and FET. So 3 different modes. I know they're related to certain compressors. The bus, I think, is that a Neve compressor? I don't know. But yeah, they're based on actual studio compressors, and they all give a different kind of sound, okay? Then you've got a blend, so that's going to blend your dry signal with your compressed signal. You've got your time, so that's basically how fast your attack and release is from left to right. Compression, so the amount of compression, and then an output, a separate output as well. But the ratio switch is awesome. You get like 5 different settings for the ratio, and I think there's an extra one when you're on the FET mode, which apparently, I can't remember what studio compressor that is, but you can basically push all the switches in and have all the ratios going at once, which gives off this kind of aggressive sound, I'd imagine. But yeah, that's integrated into the pedal as well, which is crazy. And you can actually, when you plug it into your computer, you can change some of the parameters. I think mainly with like the attack and release, you can kind of set a wider range or more narrow when you plug it into your computer. So yeah, I go into that. My setting for it, you can see that it's set basically where the picture in the bottom is. Then we go to the Dane. So this is Danish Pete's, Pete Honore, his pedal with Thorpy effects. So these guys showed me this at the guitar show in, which one was it? We've been to a few. So we were there with Veevar Guitar, and these guys were next to us, and I played it for the first time. At the time, I didn't have a guitar amp at all. I was like obsessed with just using straightforward plugins, plugging in and going. A lot of the records that I produced or played guitar on, even Pillow Talk for Zane, was a DI'd guitar. No, it wasn't. It was a Pod HD 500X. So I was using that at the time. I was going between studios with other producers, just taking that and my guitar. So everything was digital and real simple. So when I tried this out at the guitar show, I didn't even have an amp, so I didn't buy one. But as soon as I got one, I was like, that's going to be my overdrive pedal. So yeah, lots of cool settings on there. There's a drive, a boost. Apparently the boost goes before the drive in this, so it gives, I don't know, a bit more of a kind of, I guess it pushes the drive a bit more, and then you get some kind of compression in that. There's a tone, which basically works like the tone knob on your guitar, and then a volume, separate volume as well. So we'll hear how that sounds in a minute. Then the last thing I have, other than the looper that we talked about, is the Foxgear Echosex Baby, which is really, really cool. It's just a pretty standard delay. You've got tone, you've got age, which is cool. You get sort of like that kind of tape sort of sound where when you turn it up, it starts getting a bit kind of out of tune with the delay. You've got level, you've got time, and you've got repeats. So basically how many times your delay is gonna repeat.
Duh.
And yeah, I really love this pedal. It just sounds really, really clean. It's really simple. The only thing I would like on it is a kind of tap tempo feature. But I mean, once you're set, and then you're ready to go. So that's the pedal board. Okay, so my guitar, let's plug in. Ooh. Cool, so this is my custom shop Fender Strat. Is it gonna focus? I need to get my face out of the way, there we go. Lovely. Cool, so yeah, this is my favorite guitar at the moment. I got this about a year ago. And yeah, as you can see, it's a relic, which is great because unlike my PRS Custom 24, which is all blingy, when you buy it, you don't want to bash it. With this, you just kind of treat it like you've had it for 50 years. And it just sounds good. And the great thing is I've even got kind of dings in the guitar myself, because I've not been as careful with it because it's a relic. And I kind of like the fact I've got my own identity on it now, rather than it just being the artificial kind of battering. But yeah, it's really, really nice. It's based on a 60s Strat, so kind of the prime time, pre-CBS, and it's got 60s pickups in it, kind of vintage, really nice vintage bridge on it. And the rosewood on the neck is just, I don't know if you can see that close up. Let me see if you can get that. Let me get even closer. It's just gorgeous rosewood. So yeah, it's called Treble A rosewood. But yeah, this is basically how I get such a nice sound out of the guitar amp. The guitar amp is great, but yeah, the guitar is just, it just feels amazing. So I use this. I use a Mexican Martin, which was quite cheap as an acoustic guitar. And I mic'd that up with the Neumann through the Avalon. And I've got a PRS Custom 24 that you've seen. And then I've got a bass guitar, which I bought recently actually, which is a really, really nice Sandberg, which is a German-made bass guitar. It's lovely, 4-string. I wish I had it in this room because under the lights and everything, it's like a matte finish, but it's like purple, but it's called Purple Burst. So the black kind of goes into purple from the outside. Really, really nice with a maple neck. But yeah, in terms of spec with this, that's pretty much, it's a Strat. You know what a Strat does. It's actually a really, really nice feeling neck. And yeah, the strings I use 10s. Anyway, so let me just show you a couple of these pedals quickly. So this is with the compressor on. Where's my pick? And then off. So you probably didn't hear much difference there, but it's just so subtle and just cleans everything up when it's in a mix. And with the lead, because I use my fingers a lot, It just gives that extra kind of pickup of volume where I might be just kind of, you know, getting that, you know, those notes to kind of get picked up more often. And the resonance as well of like the lead note. You know, the sustain of it is just really nice. Without it, it kind of dies off a bit quicker. You get that initial attack. It just dies off, whereas this, just kind of one solid volume all the way through. And you can really notice it. It just almost, when you're playing along to a backing track, you just get that boost that you need. And it just makes it easier to play. It feels like you're playing a lot smoother. Well, I find anyway. And also, I don't have much gain as well. That is literally on about 25 to 12, which is not much at all. The tone I've got set slightly over 12 o'clock, and then my boost and my lows are at about 10 o'clock. Okay, so yeah, that's that. So this is without the boost. And then on my bridge pickup, sorry, my neck pickup, with the boost. Right, so the only other thing that we can really look at is the delay. So this is where I have the delay set. Yeah, just really subtle. I don't know how much you're getting that picked up on the mic, but I've also got my reverb on about 9 o'clock there. So on the clean with the boost. Okay, so that is literally my really simple pedal board, my amp. I'm going to show you the channels actually. So let's hear the channel 2. It has a lot more body. If I was using a rhythm channel and using kind of a distorted rhythm, which I don't do much, but if I was, I'd probably use this over the Dane, to be honest. It's got a lot of kind of... So yeah, the settings, I've got the EQ pretty much the same. They're all on 12 o'clock, but slightly over on some of them. High gain. So that's on the bridge pickup. This is on the neck. I need my PRS for this one really, with the humbuckers. So yeah, you can get kind of any tone you want out of that as like a basic kind of foundation, and then obviously you can have your clean channel and just throw pedals in front of it, which is what I do most of the time.
you.